we are 3 sessions in this parenting seminar. The first one is getting things done, and we're going to talk about what that looks like. The second one is managing emotions. That's in 2 weeks. And the third one is on navigating electronics, which we'll need the first 2 in order to deal with the third one. So we have to learn these parenting tools and parenting strategies in order to get where we want to be. So you're in session 1 right now, and that will help you to understand some very important things about what we're going to do in preparation for this. I want to throw this up. If you're with a church group and you want to, there are some churches who said, hey, we want to do a party. We want to have some questions for a group discussion. Just take a screenshot of this. I'm not going to read it all. This is for you. If you're a church leader here today, these are your questions for group discussion to use at the end of the recording. So feel free to use this, take a screenshot of it, and I'll throw it up again later. Or you can find this if you're watching the recording further on down the process after the teaching, right before the question and answer time. Okay, so that feel free to take a screenshot of that so you can use it later in your own for your own group or church. All right, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Scott Turansky. It sounds like many of you know me already. I have, with Joanne Miller, we designed and started the National Center for Biblical Parenting about 25 years ago. Since then, we've trained over 300 coaches who represent us one-on-one working with parents. We've trained 150 presenters who are able to teach our live parenting seminars around the country. I am a professor at Concordia University, where I teach the master's level parenting course for the students who are going through the family life education degree. These are going to be social workers, children's pastors, and so on. They go through my course, and each one has to work with a parent as they go through the program, and I'm mentoring them to teach them what a heart-based approach to parenting is like. Now I do it all through the National Center for Biblical Parenting as well. I still teach at the college, but I teach this through the National Center for Biblical Parenting. So you may want to become trained as a parent coach, or you might want to be a client of one of the coaches, and you can learn more about that here as we go. So what I want you to do is post in the chat for a moment, what country are you from? And if you're from the USA, then what state? So just take a moment and put it in there so we can see it. Let's see, in order to see that, I need to stop the sharing. So you see what I'm looking for. I want to know those things. Let's see, what do we got here? Down in the chat, who's telling us where they're from? Let me just tell you, we had about 1,000 people sign up for this, and they're from all over the world. We have people coming from China, from India, from Bangladesh, from the Philippines, from Malaysia. We have about 40 people signed up from Malaysia. We had people from New Zealand and Australia. Now, all of those people, it's morning time for them, and good morning to all of you who are watching this. Welcome. I'm glad that you're a part of this. Now, for those who are on the other side of the world, those people who are on let's see, we've got people from all over the place. We've got a lot of people from the United States, but the people over in Europe, they're probably not watching this because it's 2 or 3 in the morning for them. They'll probably watch the recording. But we have people signed up from the UK, from Germany, Italy, France, from Eastern Europe in Ukraine, from the Netherlands, from Latvia, are all signed up there. Then we have also from Africa, we have people from Nigeria, from South Africa, and Kenya. So far, we've seen those. Let's see who else. Boy, you guys are telling us where everybody's from. From Nairobi, it's 3 a.m. and you're from there. Somebody from Beijing is signed in. Japan. Oh, great. Hey, I'm just great. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention all the North American people. We've got from Canada and United States, obviously, from Mexico, a whole bunch of people from the islands, from Bermuda and from Dominican Republic, from Central America, and from other places, other islands. We have people from Belize who signed up, from Peru, from Venezuela, have all signed up. Oh, calling from Peru. There we go, from Bermuda. They're right there in the chat, so you can see the different places, and we're grateful that you're joining with us. So people are from all over the place, and we're grateful that you're a part of what's going on here. today with us. May God bless you wherever you are as you're working with your children, and those of you who are working with as church leaders, with the folks that you're dealing with as parents. I want to do a poll. Joan, can you bring up that first poll? This is a poll where we can find out how old your kids are. It's multiple choice now. So we're going to put it up there, and it'll stay up there for just about 30 seconds. So you should be able to see the poll. Can you see the poll? Okay, good. Oh, good. People are marking down. I want to know, and you can put in more than one category if you want there. And so we're going to do this for a few more seconds. Take a moment. Tell us about the ages of your children. And notice we put adult children living independently, all of those, because we know that some of you are here not really for your children, but as church leaders, which we're going to come to in another moment. I'm going to ask a question about church leaders. Okay, it looks like we've got, well, let's give it a couple more seconds here to see what we got. Let's go ahead and, am I the one ending the poll here? It looks like I am. I'm going to end the poll, and I think that tabulates it and share the results. Let's see. Can you see those results? What do we got here? We've got 17% have infants, 31% have preschool, 64% of you have elementary age kids. Some of you have middle school children and high school kids, some adult kids, and some adult children living independently. That's great. I spend some time working with those folks in counseling, just helping launch those adult children. So I understand the challenges that are there. I'm grateful that you're with us. That's great. 220 people responded in our poll. Wow, the numbers are getting up there. That's great. Thank you for responding. All right, let's do another poll, and that means I'm going to close this window. I want to know if you're an influencer in your church. That is, are you a pastor, pastor's wife? Do you help church, or maybe you're a coach, you help churches develop parent discipleship programs? I want to know how many of you are here for that purpose as well. Well, you've got the poll number 1. I'm going to, can I take over here and try to launch that second? Oh, relaunching the poll. I don't want to do, I want to cancel that. Can you, oh, you got it. Okay. Nope, that's the second one. You want to, don't do that one.
Not this one.
Let's go to the third one. There's a third poll in there about influences. Well, I'm going to get rid of that one.
Okay.
I'm going to delete that one. Are you a church leader? This is the question. So yes or no. We just want to find out what percentage of people here are church leaders. You don't have to be a church leader, but we just want to know. So as I'm talking, we have 2 divisions at the National Center for Biblical Parenting. One division helps parents directly work with their children using a heart-based approach. That's primarily what we're going to talk about today, but I know that some church leaders here are here because they're trying to decide, should they bring this live parenting seminar to their church? We, Joanne Miller and I, do come to churches and teach live parenting seminars, and so we're grateful. I know this is a yes or no. Some of you are here because you're here because of your parents, and you're also church leaders. So mark church leaders there so we can see what's going on. Wow, it's I'm going to end the poll now and share the results, and that tells us that we've got 30% of our folks here are church leaders, and thank you for being with us. I trust that the things you learn here, you'll be able to pass on to others. Maybe you would like to become a coach. Let me just share with you one testimony from one of our coaches that just went through the training in in the summer. Here's what she said at the end. I asked for an evaluation at the end. Here's what she said. My whole worldview of what parenting is has changed. The heart-based approach is far different from how I was raised, and it gives simple techniques and tools that can be applied to most any situation. I loved learning about how different character qualities can be strengthened to combat different tendencies. This program is great in the way that it was hands-on. I do not think the typical classroom setting could have taught as much as the experience of going through the 8-week training with a family. That's from Lydia, one of our coaches in training. And thank you, Lydia, for allowing me to share that testimony. All right, let's go back into our presentation here, and let me tell you that the Managing Emotions one you'll have to sign up for. I'm going to tell you in just a moment when you can do that. It's not available yet, but it will be during this session, so you can go sign up for it. But it's not, if you go there and sign up, you're going to be signing up for the first one again. So, but during this session at some point, the Managing Emotions one will be set up, and I'll let you know when that takes place. In that one, we're going to be talking about how to help children who are off track get back on track. In this one, we're going to talk about how to get things done in the child's heart and in life. So that's where we're headed. We'll also, toward the end, talk about some resources to help you. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to give you some tools that will help you to know how to respond to give you continuing learning. That's what we want to do. There's the Power Pack, there's the Parenting Power Pack Plus, and there's personalized coaching. More about that as we go forward. But I want to get right into teaching you today so that we can understand where we're going. So here we go. Today we're going to talk about the getting done department of family life. What is that? I want you to think it first in terms of the tasks that have to be done in your home. From getting up in the morning, doing the morning preparation, through the day, you're going to do all kinds of things like homework, chores. Some of these are very simple things that need to be done. Some are very complex things. When we get to things like laundry or food, let's take food, for example. You've got to buy the food, then you got to put the food away. Then you've got to get the food out and cook it. Then you've got to put it on the table. Then you got to clean it up. Some of them are complex. Some of them are very simple. There's things like getting along, getting in the car, we need to go, going shopping, doing errands. There's the unforeseen surprises. That comes into this area because some children have a hard time when you surprise them about something. They react. This is all in the getting things done department. Just having conversations with children is in this area. Eating meals together, the entertainment we choose, whether it's video games or some other kind of entertainment, and then, of course, getting to bed when we're done. Those are the tasks of getting things done. But I'm not going to talk to you today about those particularly. Those are the arena in which we're working on a child's heart, where the child has a place in his or her heart called the getting things done department. What do you see in your child's heart? Whenever you're doing these tasks, you're going to see the heart revealed. Jesus told us that it's out of the heart that the mouth speaks. What do you see? Maybe you see some things like this: bad attitudes or whining and complaining. Maybe you see arguing or defiance or bickering or a lack of focus. That's for a child that has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Things I'm going to share today apply to that kind of a child as well. A child who doesn't listen, a child who's self-focused or dawdling, a child who has a problem with meanness or dishonesty, lack of cooperation, ignoring you when you call his name or her name, resistance, and of course, anger. These things take place in a child's heart when you ask them to do a task. And that's where I want to spend some time. Because if we can help children in the arena, think of the term, the arena is where the action takes place. The arena is the other things that we just looked at, all of these things, getting up and doing whatever we need to do. And we see these things, we know we have things to work on. And I'm going to show you what to do with those things and how to respond to them. Where we're going is we want to help children develop these things, because these are the heart qualities that we have an opportunity to develop in the getting things done department of family life. Obligation is that uncomfortable feeling that I need to do something. And when we increase that in a child, the I need to overcomes the I want to. Very important part of family life, of a person's heart. I need to versus I want to. The sense of obligation is what motivates you to finally put gas in the car. It's what motivates a child to do a job completely. Obligation training is so important, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in the getting things done department. It's going to increase responsibility. Perseverance is hanging in there even after you feel like quitting. Many of our children need that. Diligence is the ability to work hard. Thoroughness is attention to detail. Focus is the ability to give attention to something. Cooperation is the ability to give up your agenda to work as a team. Contribution is seeing what needs to be done and doing it without being asked. These are qualities that every person needs in their life. In this area of parenting, when you're working on all the tasks of family life, you want to be able to develop these qualities. They're so important. Integrity is developed in this area. If someone comes to me and says, we're having a problem with honesty in our home, and I say, okay, we're going to start right here in the getting things done department. We're not going to go to the integrity yet, because we have to develop some things in the heart so that the heart's ready to have integrity. I'm going to show you what that looks like in this session. Responsiveness to authority is so important. Honor is valuing the home, that is the people in the home and the house. That's two ways we use the term home. Honor. Children need to develop that in their lives. We want children to learn to be others focused. We want them to have compassion and kindness. That's learned here. When I work with young people, these are teenagers between the ages of well, let's say between 10 and 25 is the ages of adolescence. We'll talk about that at some point. But we want them to develop three qualities: emotional management, creative problem solving, and gracious speech. Those are skills learned when differences take place. And where are those differences going to show up? They're going to show up in the getting things done department of life. So when I talk today, I don't want you to just think about the getting things done department that has to do with the tasks that need to get done. I want to talk about the getting things done department that goes inside the child's heart. That is where the real learning takes place. And as we learn that, we're going to learn some valuable things. So if we go back and you see all the bad attitudes, whining, and so on, when there's a lot of that in the getting things done department, your family is going to experience a lot of tension, stress. The energy that you could use to fulfill the God-given mission that your family has been called to do is being used up by all of these things that require so much interaction. Tension increases, and so the oil doesn't work in the machine too well of family life. We have a lot of tension. That's why we're going to help children develop these life skills. All these ones, obligation, responsibility, they'd already put up there. These are all life skills because they're not just for children, so they'll develop them now. These are for kids, so they'll have them for the rest of their lives. It's very important to understand that the things we're working on now with our children are not just to get the clothes cleaned and the dishes put away. I know it can sometimes feel like we just got to get our tasks done for today. Mom and dad have a huge to-do list, and so we're working together to try to get it done and get children to cooperate, but the tension that exists is an indication of a problem. And children need to learn these life skills. So we're going to teach them what that looks like and help them do that in some strategic ways. That's where we're going. That's what I mean by the getting things done department. And I think this is going to be really helpful for you as we move into some solutions here that are going to be great for your particular situation. Whether you have children that are 3, 4, 5 years old in the preschool area, they can develop obligation and responsibility and so on. If you got teenagers and they need life skills because they're moving into adulthood, we all need them. And many times parents will say, you know, I need these life skills myself, and they are learned in the getting things done department. That's where we're going to spend some time. So I want to do another poll. Can you bring up a poll there for us? Joan, this is a poll about the getting things done department. Let me ask you a question. Does your child have challenges in the getting things done department? The answer is yes or no. Go ahead. We'll put it up here for about 30 seconds here just to get some feedback from you, because sometimes children are doing pretty well in the midst of that. This tells me that we have about 304 people on this Zoom meeting, so we're grateful that you're here. I'll give you about 10 more seconds to answer that poll. Looks like most people have responded. Anybody else want to respond there? We've got quite a bit of response. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Let me share it with you because I don't want you to feel alone. I want you to see that out of the 300 and some people that are possible here, the 233 people who answered this question, 225 people, 97% of these people said, yes, this is an area we need help in. Now, today I'm going to not only give you an assignment, I'm not only going to teach you something important, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an assignment today. And I want you to work on this assignment for 2 weeks. And when you're done with the 2 weeks, I want you to come back here and I'm going to talk to you. I want to know what you did that worked when you come back 2 weeks from now. And so I'm going to give you a very specific assignment to work on with your children. Some of you are going to work with young children, some with elementary age children, some with those in middle school, some with teenagers, and we're going to try to work on this and see if we can bring about some change. Let me tell you a story about one of my coaches in the training from summer. I trained 22 coaches in the summer this past few months. And in the second week of the 8-week training, one of the coaches asked this question. She said, how long should it be before we see change in the child using this program? My answer to the question was this: if you're not seeing change in 1 week, then something's wrong. And that something's wrong could be a number of things. It could be that the parent isn't following through, or it could be that the coach isn't explaining it properly or didn't communicate very well. Certainly children are going to resist as we're starting to work this program and move forward. We know that, and we have all kinds of solutions for that. So if there's something wrong, we're going to solve it. We should see change in 1 week. And that doesn't mean the child's going to be an angel, but we're moving, we're making progress. You're going to want to know that, because as you're working with your children and you start doing this, you're going to see change right away. Now, it's very important that you take advantage of the momentum and move forward. I'm going to show you a little bit about what that looks like so that you can get an idea of what you can do. So before I can tell you more about the task I want to give you, you have to understand some biblical parenting principles, and these will guide you through. This is going to give you power in your parenting. If I can take the Bible and energize you in your parenting, you're going to have more oomph. You're going to have more inspiration. You're going to feel like, yes, we need to hang in here, because parenting is the toughest job in the world. We need as much help as we can get. Biblical parenting principle number 1 is this: you are the best counselor or therapist or coach for your child if you have a good plan. And my job is to help you have that plan. That's why we're meeting today. If I can equip you with a good plan, then you can move forward as the best counselor or therapist or coach for your child. There's a current trend today. If a child's having problems or emotional challenges or whatever, we need to take the child to a counselor. I'm concerned about that. I often find that that's a problem. In fact, my favorite statement is, so people call the National Center for Biblical Parenting all the time. I'll meet with anybody for free for a few minutes to talk about their situation, just to touch base with them and give them some direction. What I think, hey, here's your next step. So people can sign up for those free consultations, and then I'll meet with anybody. And sometimes parents will call and they'll say, okay, I'm interested in your coaching program. Our daughter's been in counseling for a year. How old is your daughter? She's 8 years old. I say, okay. Now I love that, because I say in response to that, I say to the parent, well, that's great. Your child's been in counseling for a year. Why don't you tell me what your child's learned and how your child's changed over that year? Invariably, the parent will say something like, well, we haven't really made any progress. I don't think we've made any change in the last year. And I'm going, oh, it's taken so long to get to us. There's many times when I've taken clients on in the coaching program and worked with them, because I work with the hardest ones usually, and their child's been in coaching or counseling of some kind. And I say we start working the program, we start seeing change right away. Parents have often said, we've seen more change in 2 weeks in the biblical parenting coaching program than we saw in a year in counseling. Why is that? Because the counselor primarily works by sitting down and talking to the child, or they use some play therapy or sand therapy or something like that. If you feel like that's necessary for your child, maybe you'll gain some benefit from that, and that's great. I'm sure that some people do. But the power really is in the therapy part we do with our children. When I say therapy, I mean practice sessions. Think about if your child couldn't talk properly, then you would take your child to a speech therapist, and the speech therapist would sit down and talk to your child. But then they'd go into the lab and they would show the child how to move his mouth differently. They would do activities that would help the child connect with the mouth, the tongue, the lips in a way that can help them to speak better. If your child couldn't walk, you'd get him speech therapy, and the speech therapist would bring him into the office and they'd talk a little bit, but then they'd go out onto the floor where they would actually practice exercise, practice walking by putting one foot in front of the other. They would do exercises. You see, I'm convinced that many of our children, and I would suggest most of our children today, need therapy. I don't mean take them to a counselor. I mean, what they need is practice sessions. They need practice sessions to exercise their heart so they can develop the life skills, and the arena is the getting things done. All those tasks we talked about, those are the arena where we have an opportunity to practice these things. So you are it. God has chosen those children for you, and you to be the parents for that child, because you are going to be the person who's going to, as the scriptures say there, as you can see there, to teach them while you sit in the house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, when you rise, as part of life. It's going to be life activities are going to be the key places where you're going to teach your child. So remember that biblical parenting principle number one is that you're the best counselor for your child. The second principle is this, that training is more powerful for heart change than correction alone. Notice the scripture that I put there, 2 Timothy 3:16. Now that verse is not talking about parenting. That verse is talking about the Bible and how the Bible brings about change in 4 ways to a person's life. But I want you to take those words and I want you to ask the question, how do you as a parent bring about change to a child's life? If we look at those 4 words that are used there, which ones do you do most? It says they're all scripture is God-breathed and is useful for 4 things. So if you evaluate your parenting there and you do these 4 things, which ones do you do the most? I thought about doing another poll, but just for the sake of time, we're not going to do it. But most parents will say something like this, well, I'm pretty good on the rebuking side, and the correcting I do a lot of. I don't do much of the training in righteousness or the teaching. That's where the power is. So what I'm about to show you today is some training techniques, some training exercises that take advantage of the arena of getting things done in order to exercise some areas of the heart to build life skills that'll help your child for the future. That's what we're going to do. It's so powerful, it'll help bring about significant change in your child. That's biblical parenting principle number 2. The third principle I want you to see is that a heart-based approach to parenting is much more powerful than reward-punishment models. You remember the story of Samuel getting ready to anoint a king. And he sees Eliab and he says, that's going to be the king. He's obviously the king. He's tall and handsome. Reminds me of the last king, King Saul. But God spoke to Samuel in a way that changed Samuel's thinking. He said to him, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. That was a revolution in thinking for Samuel. It changed the way he thought about people from then on. It was so helpful for him to learn that. And I think we need a revolution in our own parenting. We've got to be able to respond to the challenges that our kids face, not just using reward punishment. Reward punishment is basically saying to a child, clean up your toys and you can have a snack. Finish your homework and you can go out and play. If children get a steady diet of that, then basically you're saying to a child, I'll give you what you want if you do what I say. And children then learn to ask the wrong questions about life. They start asking questions like, what's in it for me? You going to pay me for that? Or what's the minimum I need to do in order to get my reward? Or to stop this punishment? You see, we're trying to do something deeper inside of our child. Why should a child be cleaning up the toys or finishing their homework? Because it's the right thing to do. It requires a whole different way of thinking and working with children to do that. It's not easy to work with children using a heart-based approach, but it produces so many lasting results. It requires some change in the way we work with children, and I want you to understand a little bit more about what the heart is. First, we have desires. You know, in Psalm 37:4, it says, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. I just quote that verse because it reminds us where those desires live. They live in the heart of a person. Well, where do emotions live? They live in the heart also. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Or Jesus said to his disciples in John 14:1, do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid. You see, desires and emotions are inside the heart. And I would suggest that about 90% of the problems you have with a child who has some real challenges has to do with their desires and emotions. Their desires are too strong. They can't let them go. They turn into these heavy expectations. And if things don't go the way they expect, they react with emotion because their emotions are tied in to their desires. One of our coaches created this infographic that was that's given to people who are in the coaching program. But I just want you to see the piece of it. I've blown this image up so you can understand this a little bit more. Notice the graph on the left-hand side. It goes from low to high. When expectations are high, these desires inside of the heart, then the child's holding on to them very strongly. And then on the vertical plane here, we have emotions. And when emotions are high in a child, then they are very intense. Now, when you put the two together, notice on the chart there, you end up with demandingness. So the child with high expectations and high emotions becomes demanding. And part of our task here is to use the things that are going on in family life to reduce the demands back down to desires or wishes. We're increasing emotional flexibility. We're going to talk more about this when we get to navigating electronics, because we're not just going to talk about how much time a child should be able to play on their electronics or whatever. We're going to talk about safety and all those things, but we also want to talk about how do we help a child's heart using the electronics as a vehicle, just like we're using getting things done. To help build these things in the heart, we can use electronics to strengthen a child's heart qualities as well, but it's going to be tough. Because if they have high emotions and high expectations, they are going to demonstrate demandingness. And that's where we see emotional addiction. And I'll talk about, electronics addiction. We'll talk about that some more. Let me give you an example. Let's say that Billy is 12 years old and he knows he's having spaghetti for dinner. He's excited about the spaghetti we're having for dinner. And he comes down and he finds out there's no meatballs. Mom didn't make meatballs tonight. If it was a wish, he'd say, well, I wish we had meatballs. If it was just a desire, he would say, wow, I really like meatballs. But he's demanding, so he says, no meatballs? How could you make spaghetti without meatballs? I'm not eating that stuff. And so the child then becomes demanding, and this demandingness creates the tension. A child needs to learn emotional flexibility. That is learned in the Getting Things Done department. I can hardly wait to share with you some of these things we're going to talk about here. So desires and emotions are inside the heart. Beliefs are also inside the heart. Children believe strange things about life sometimes. Things like chores are mom's work. She's just trying to delegate her work to me. Or that homework is a waste of time. Or that if my brother's annoying, I have the right to punch him. I mean, children have all these beliefs inside of the heart, and part of our goal is to bring about a change in those beliefs in our children. That's going to come through some various tools. I'll share 3 of them with you in just a moment that you're going to be able to use as you work with your child. But overall, I want you to see that large word in the middle, the word tendencies, because if you want to work on the heart of your child, think tendencies. This is your entry point, the doorway into the heart, because you want to ask the question, what tendency does my child have? Does my child have a tendency to argue with me when I give him an instruction? When I give my child an instruction, does he have a tendency to say, wait a minute? Does he have the wait a minute disease? Does he have a tendency to say no? A child who has a tendency to say no, we often view them as oppositional. How does a child respond when you interrupt them from their activity, whatever it is? Those are the tendencies we're targeting here, because tendencies exist inside the heart of a person. If a child has a one-time episode, that's not a tendency. But if you see it over and over again, you're dealing with the heart. That's your entry point. And then your parental radar goes off and says, yes, we need to deal with this. This is important. Jesus is the one that says, when he's talking about all these sins that people have, he says, these things come from the heart of a person. And he says in Matthew 12:34, it's out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. We have to work in the heart of a child. That's where we're going to see some significant change, and we're going to help them make those changes. I want to show you what that looks like. And I'm going to share with you 3 of the 7 parenting tools at the same time. Now, you want to, parents say this, okay, yeah, I know the heart is important. Everybody knows that. We all want to reach our child's heart, but how do you do that? In the Biblical Parenting Coaching Program, we have these 7 parenting tools. Now, when I say tools, I'm referring to these 7 tools that God uses to bring about change in you and me. So if we study the scriptures and we understand that God brings about change in a person's life, then we recognize that he has special strategies that he does. So we study the scriptures to find out what those are, and we've identified 7 tools, and each one of these 7 tools represent a bucket of solutions. It's not just one simple line item. Each one is a bucket of things that they can work on as they're working with their children. The first one is relationship. So this is your assignment. Start writing this down. It's a complicated assignment, but you're going to do a bunch of things at the same time, and I'm going to share tools and one technique with you to work on. The 3 tools are relationship visioning and firmness. Relationship is important. When you think relationship, jot this down: emotional connectedness. One mom was telling me this week she has an adopted daughter who's 10, she's really had a hard time to connect with, doesn't share a lot, is kind of closed off. They are in tension a lot, but they're doing homeschooling now, and this girl happens to like they're using the Sunlight curriculum, where there's a lot of reading, and the daughter really likes the reading. And so mom's taking advantage of that, because here's what you do with a relationship. You have an emotional connecting moment, whether it's reading in this case, or it's playing games, or it's just talking. It might be doing something together, or tickling, or it could be a whole bunch of things. But you see the eyes light up in that child, or that smile comes on, and you know you've emotionally connected with that child. Once you do that, you want to celebrate it by making a statement, by saying, oh, I really enjoyed that. That was great. Or we have a good time together when we do this. And that's what she did with the reading. She said, I can hardly wait to see what's next in the chapter. You and I really enjoyed that reading. That's something we share that's special. That's all she said, because she's trying to soften the heart of that child. That's what relationship does. She did that for a couple of days. And she said, as she was reading, her daughter put her head down on her lap. And this is something so uncharacteristic of her daughter. It was one of those moments where there was an emotional connectedness. Relationship softens the heart. That's why God starts the change process in our lives with relationship. That's so important. I'll work with teenagers regularly, the parents of teenagers, and there's tension that exists in those relationships. And I'll say, start with relationship. Look for ways to emotionally connect. So that's your first assignment. And if you've got a dad and a mom in this home, then you want to both look for ways to emotionally connect with this child, because dads always do it differently than moms. It's just part of what happens. And the child's heart starts to soften, and that's really powerful. So make that a priority. I'm not going to spend any more time there, but relationship softens the heart, and it makes room for the next things that are going to happen. The second tool is visioning, and that provides perspective. This is a meeting you're going to have with your child. I would encourage you to have a sit-down meeting. Set an appointment if you need to. Get dressed up if you need to. Go out to dinner whatever you need to do to have this meeting. And you're going to say something like this: son, you're doing great in a number of different ways. I'm getting good reports from your school that you're doing well there. And I just appreciate the way you've been taking care of the cat. One thing I want to work on with you is a life skill that's going to help you for the rest of your life. I want to work with you to help you develop cooperation. This is one of those things that's going to help you not just now so that you and I can have a better relationship, but this is going to help you when you are on a sports team. It's going to help you when you get into college someday. It's going to help you to be a better dad. It's going to help you to be a better husband. When you develop cooperation, it's one of those life skills, and I'm excited to work with you. I'm actually excited to share these things with you, because we're going to work on this together, and I'm going to prepare you for life. It's a life skill you'll need for the future, and we're going to work on it now. That's visioning. Whenever we start something new, we try to embrace it in visioning, because that's the way what God does. That's why we like verses like Jeremiah 29:11. It says, I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. We like those verses where in Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, where it says, God says, I'm bringing you now to a place of completion as we work together in this. This is so valuable, what God wants to do in our lives. So visioning, don't miss the visioning part, strategic. And then lastly, firmness. Now, firmness, don't just think about consequences. Firmness is about structures. Firmness is where we build the character. This is where we're going to set up a structure. This is where I'm going to give you a technique in just a moment to be able to work on in your home. Practice this for 2 weeks. Come back and tell me what you did 2 weeks from now. I can hardly wait to hear about that, because the firmness builds character. Setting up structures for your child. So in some cases, we're basically saying we're not going to live this way anymore. We're going to make some changes in our interaction. If I know some of you are eager to get to the navigating electronics part, but remember, that's many children are pretty ingrained in their habits there. You can start by taking away some electronics or working on electronics, but we really want to work on some other things in family life to build the internal skills necessary so that the child's ready to deal with a stronghold like electronics. So that's why it's on the last part of our sessions. Let's spend some time now using some firmness in order to help develop some things with us. are we, did we switch over the, why don't you go ahead and do that for us for just a moment. I'm going to, let me just take you to, I want to, give me just a second here. I want to talk to you about some tools that you can use to further this. Now, I'm going to share with you one technique that is going to help you today. And I want you to understand how these techniques fit into the process of parenting. Because parents often want techniques as they're working with their children. And I want you to understand the value of techniques, where they fit into the process, what that looks like, so that you understand them. Because if you just go for techniques, you're going to miss something very important as you're working with your children. So let me show you this slide just to give you an idea of where techniques fit in. Because you can Google anything you want, techniques for dealing with electronics or emotional management or dealing with chores or getting things done. You can do that, and that'll be helpful for you. But the best way to use techniques is to tie them into a heart-based approach. The heart-based approach is what we're talking about here, because now we're using techniques to address deeper issues. We're not just using techniques as reward and punishment to get things done. And most of the things you see if you Google something are techniques that are reward punishment based. But so it's like three umbrellas. Techniques fit under a heart-based approach, and that fits under biblical parenting. So you want to think about the scriptures, how you're going to use those, and how God wants to work in your life in order to make that happen in your life. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the resources that you can look at later. These are tools for continuing learning for you in case you want them. We've divided them into three. You can go look at them at that website at your convenience. I don't want to spend a lot of time here. I just want to get back into teaching, but I want you to know that we designed the Parenting Power Pack so that you would have more audio sessions. You can listen to 20 audio sessions there. You'll get 2 ebooks. You'll get some lessons you can work on with your child. You'll get some handouts that you can use. Infographics that we've created, all of that in the Parenting Power Pack. And so please go take a look at that. You can see another set of resources at that same website, which are the tools that you can use that will help you fill out your library. They're specific kinds of tools that deal with anger or deal with electronics, deal with these other things you're going to need. And that you get everything in the Parenting Power Pack plus more in the Parenting Power Pack Plus. So please take a look at that if you'd like. And then I know that some of you will be interested in this personalized parent coaching. There's no problem that can't be addressed more fully in the coaching program. So it's a very structured program. We're taking you through the various aspects of a child's heart, but we're doing it in a way that tailors it specifically to you. So we want you to know what that looks like, and we want you to be able to experience that in your life. All right. I want to share with you a technique. And so this technique is going to help you in several different ways in your home. This is a technique that we designed. It's only a technique. It doesn't necessarily come from the Bible, but as we study the Bible, we look at this technique and we see how valuable it is for working with our children. And when we use it this way, then good things happen. But I need to explain it to you because I don't want you to think it's just getting things done. But I want you to see what it looks like in some powerful ways. So let me show you this technique, take you through it, and explain to you how to use it. We call this this technique the instruction routine. The instruction routine is what you use regularly to get things done around the house. And if you have a routine that does that, it starts to create the firmness, the structure inside of your child's heart that can work on these different character issues that you're trying to do. Okay, so we call it the instruction routine. In the handouts that you get through the Parenting Power Pack and all those things, you'll have one of the handouts is 5 different parts for the parent, 5 different parts for the child. But I just want to give you a part of it that you can implement right now in the next 2 weeks as part of your assignment. The first one I want you to see is come when called. Now, obviously, when your child's a preschooler, that's going to be different and you use this than when they're an older teen. But the idea is you're developing responsiveness to authority. When a child's young, you want to call their name, only their name, nothing else. You don't say, Billy, come here. You just call the name Billy. And when you do, the child needs to learn how to come to you and say, what, mom, or yes, mom. Here's why we teach this. As soon as you call a child's name, he should know that he is now on duty. He feels a sense of obligation. This sense of obligation helps him to know that he's got to do something. So when you practice with a child over and over again to come when called, that child is developing this obligation just in a simple routine. There's one way: I call your name, you come. Now, I want you to know, I don't believe that every child, every time, ought to have to stop what they're doing and come when called. But if a child is having a problem in this area of getting things done, and their heart is, they always have to wait, they always have to say no, then they aren't ready. They have some challenges. They need to learn obligation. They need to learn how to come when called. So I would suggest at first you're going to be pretty firm with this. There's only one response, and that is yes, mom. And they come when called. Here's why. Let's say you take a 13-year-old, and every time you call his name or you say to him something, he says, no, wait a minute, or argues with you. That challenge, that oppositional tendency is dangerous. Because whenever interrupted, whenever they start to are asked to do something, their initial response inside of their heart is no. It comes out in different ways. They might do it with a bad attitude. They might whine and complain. They might argue with you. But inside their heart, they've said no, and they're just going to comply or do something else. But if you practice this, then you're working on that, because their initial response should be yes. Whenever asked to do something, their initial response should be yes. Now, you might quickly say, well, I don't want my child to be a yes person. I don't want them to always say yes, because sometimes I want them to have priorities. So they say no to things in order to say yes to the things that are most important. Yes, that's true, but that's an advanced skill. Oh, but I want my child to be able to set boundaries, because sometimes people are pressing in on them and they need to say no. Yes, setting boundaries is good. We need to teach our children how to do that, but that's an advanced skill. Oh, I want my children to be very careful about not doing evil. I don't want them to say yes. And the answer to the question is yes. That's more relevant, that we say yes to doing good and no to evil. That's very important. But when we're having those advanced skills are important, but a child's first responsibility is to learn to say yes. This is what Jesus taught us. When someone tells you to go 1 mile, you go the extra mile. Your initial answer is yes. Then you're going to add those things later. And so some children need some practice in this yes. That's why when a child comes, we say, when you come, you need to say, yes, mom. We want them in the habit of using the word yes, because that's what they need inside their hearts. The instruction routine is powerful, in part because it's helping children give up their agenda. They're learning how to let go of what they're doing. We're going to talk next time about managing emotions. And one of the things, whether it's sadness or anger or anxiety, those are your 3 big emotional categories we're going to talk about. There is one phrase that helps you deal with those. We deal with them in different ways, but this is the phrase: let it go. Any of us knows that if we have emotional challenges, we have to let it go. Where do children learn that? It starts right here when you call their name, because they're emotionally invested in their video game. They're emotionally invested in playing in the other room or playing outside. And when you call their name, they need to come. They're having to uninvest from that and come. You are doing drills. You're doing practice sessions inside of the heart of a child in order to build some important quality. Don't underestimate this or think it's just trivial for young children. When you have an older child, a teenager, you might not have them come when called, but you're going to talk to them about the sense of cooperation. They need responsiveness to authority. There's sometimes when I'm going to come to you, sometimes when I expect you to come to me, and we're going to work together in order to get this done. But there's a sense of cooperation we're going to build, because if older teenagers are always telling you to wait a minute or putting it into their schedule, then we have a challenge. We need to bring some structure here. We're going to talk about coming when called. Very important first step in the instruction routine. It's power-packed with all kinds of things that we can use to help children make some significant changes. Step number 2, when the child comes, you're going to give a task. And I would encourage you to use these words. Son, use the child's name, Bill. You need to fill in the blank now. The reason you're using the word you need to is because you're building obligation in the child. This is what the child says to himself. He needs to say to him, I need to. When you're lying in bed at night and you realize you left something on the stove, your conscience says to you, I need to get up right now. I need to. I need to. That I need to is very important. Some parents say to their children, I need for you to do this. Well, this isn't about the parent. If you're continually saying to the child, I need for you to do this, then this is about the parent's needs. And what's going to happen if this doesn't happen? Is the parent going to have an episode here? Why is the child doing this? So that we can avoid an anger episode in the parent? No, this is about the child. So I would encourage you to use those words. You need to. And the word now just gives you a little bit of emphasis that this is one of those things you need to do now. And then the child needs to give an answer back. Okay, mom, or okay, dad. The okay, mom tells you about their attitude. It tells, it's this response that we do in adulthood. Okay, when the boss calls your name, going back to step number one, come when called, the boss calls your name, you don't say, no, you don't say, wait a minute. You're responsive to the boss. You pay attention when your employer calls your name. When he gives you a task to do, or she gives you a task to do, you say, okay, I got it. If you just walk away, the boss doesn't know whether you are sick, whether you heard her or whatever. So you give an answer back. Very important tool that children can learn. And thirdly, the child needs to report back when done. What this is doing is it's teaching children a cycle, this cycle of getting things done. Come when called, give an answer back, report back is creating a structure. They have to remember this. They're going to practice this. Imagine what this is going to do for a child who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. If we practice this over and over again for the child who lacks focus, the ability to focus, it's so strategic for helping children because it builds obligation. I had one 7-year-old little boy that I worked with who is just really a lot of movement, had a hard time focusing. And I explained to him about obligation. This is I need to. And when your obligation is high, then you're able to manage your urges to do something with your hands or be distracted or whatever. Obligation gets higher than urge, but it takes a lot of work because you have a lot of urges to get that obligation up higher. That's what we're going to practice, to come when you're called, give an answer back, and report back when you're done. Well, the fun thing was a couple of days later, mom called to set up another appointment with me. And the boy says to mom, tell Dr. Taransky that my obligation is growing. And so what he's saying is he's working on obligation. When a child who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder works this routine and starts doing the therapy, exercising the heart, they develop a character quality to help offset the biological challenge inside their brain. So now this character that they're developing helps them to manage the impulses that they have. We can deal with this in any kind of special needs situation. It is powerful to help children make changes. But whether it's a challenge of a special needs or just a child who has a special need because they argue a lot, we're going to work on this. We're going to exercise this part of family life. We're going to work on this strategically to help children make changes. So they're going to report back when they're done. This is what's going to help children to develop some very important skills. Let me point out some things that are important in this instruction routine, because this is part of your assignment for the next 2 weeks. 1, try to do this a lot, like 20 times a day. I'm not just suggesting you change the way you give instructions. If that's what you're hearing, you're missing this. Remember, I said your child needs therapy. He needs practice sessions. You want to do it 20 times a day. You're going to call this child. You're going to give an answer. He's going to give an answer back, and he's going to report back when done. You're teaching him there's a cycle. This is what you do. The child has this conception that if I complete the task, then I've done instructions properly. We're going to change that, because we're going to say to a child, if you come when called the first time, if you give an answer back without prompting, and if you report back without reminders, then you've completed the instruction correctly. 20 times a day. Think in terms of that number to try to generate a lot of movement, practice sessions. I mean, if you got kids going to school, you only have them in the afternoon. Maybe you can't do 20 times a day, but you're going to practice it a lot with your child and use those common things in family life, getting up in the morning, working on homework. Anytime that you're going to change activities and you call your child's name, that's where you start. You don't say, come and eat. You first call the child's name, and then you say, I just want to tell you I love you. Or you're going to say, hey, we're going to eat now. Why don't you go wash your hands? You start with calling the child's name because you're imposing this obligation on them that is going to be relieved when you're all done. They report back. You say, okay, you're free to go. So 20 times a day, you're going to practice if you can. Keep the tasks small. You're not sending your child out in the driveway to clean up all the mess they made out there as part of this, unless you're going to break it into pieces. Small tasks. Go out there and take the tools and put them all in the toolbox and report back to me. Then go take the wood that you had out there and put that away. So it's small tasks, or maybe even as simple as you need to pick up the pencil off the floor now and put it on the counter. I'm waiting for an answer back. Okay, Mom. And he does it and says, I'm done. He says, that was it. You did it. So small tasks teach children the cycle. They need to understand this cycle. Here's another thing you want to do. Think process. This isn't about the tasks. I've already mentioned this. Think about the process that you're working on, and then also do drills. Sometimes with children, you're going to say, okay, look, we're going to practice this a little bit so you get the idea down here. I'm going to do 5 instructions in 3 minutes. Let's see if we can get these done. So you're going to give me an answer back. You're going to report back each time. So we're building a tendency. You see what we're doing? We're working in the heart where tendencies exist. We're going to change this tendency. We're going to help this children make some significant changes. That's what's going to bring these very important areas in the heart to adjust them. That's what we're going to try to do. We want this child to understand what this looks like, and we're going to work with them a lot in order to change the tendencies that they have. So use that as your assignment. Make that your practice session so that you can be working on it as you're working with your child, and you can see all the things that are necessary in order to make progress. I'm going to summarize all your assignments here in just a moment. In fact, I'm going to throw let me do that now. Give me just a second. All right. Let me throw this up there for you so you can see it. Here's a summary of your assignments that you can work on now. Just take a screenshot of this, write these things down. 1, you're going to work with your child, and you're going to use relationship, visioning, and firmness. Are we ready with the emotions thing? Okay, good. That's your first part of your assignment. Don't miss that. Don't just jump into the technique. But notice it says down there also practice the instruction routine. That will help you. Number 2, check out the Parenting Power Pack. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment. And then number 3, sign up for session 2, Managing Emotions. I've been told that that's live now. You don't have to go rush and do it now, but anytime now until we get together, you can do that. We can only have 500 people in our Zoom meeting. We had 1,000 people sign up, some of them from overseas. I'm sure that all the Europe people, or most of them, and the Africa people are watching this in a recording later. So welcome. I'm glad that you guys are joining us now. But you want to go ahead and sign up for that. 320 people are in this program right now. So you can go ahead and take a snapshot of that as well. Let me take you to, these are the questions for group discussion if you're in a church and you wanted these. I'm going to leave that up in just a moment, but let me just go back to this these tools for continuing your learning. Just so you have them. We designed this Parenting Power Pack for you that will give you more content to continue your thinking. We know that you want to, we want to learn more about what this looks like. There are 2 things you want to practice as you're growing more in the heart-based approach. One is just educating yourself of what that is. And secondly, you want things to practice. So I gave you one idea, one technique here that you can use, but there's so many more that you can use. So we've given you 20 audio sessions in there. We've given you 2 books that are ebooks. We've given you some training materials that you can use with children. So that's the Parenting Power Pack. And the Parenting Power Pack Plus has some additional materials in there that will fill out your tools that deal with specialized concerns. So you'll have additional books. Some of those we're actually going to mail to you. You can check those things out. I encourage you to see how you can fill out your parenting library with those things. You'll find them to be very helpful as you continue to grow in your parenting. And then the personalized parent coaching. You can see all of this at the website, biblicalparenting.org, Parenting Power Pack. Now, I'm going to throw those questions up, and just in case you wanted to see those again. For group discussion, you can snapshot those and use them. Now what I want to do is something that people often think is the most valuable part of our seminars, and I'm going to do some question and answer. In order to do the question and answer, I want you to know what I want to do is I want to have I want to show your video, and I'm going to turn on your video, turn on your audio, and I want to talk to you. I want you to tell me what's going on in your home. You can ask me any questions about a problem that exists in your home right now with any child of any age, and I'm going to try to give you some next steps of how you can use a heart-based approach to do that. So that's what we're going to do here. Now, in order to do this, I need to know who wants to ask a question, but you just got to know we're going to make your video live, and we're going to unmute you, and I'm going to ask you, talk to me, tell me what's going on, and then I'm going to try to give you some additional steps that can help you. Now, in order to do that, you need to raise your hand. So I understand that under the participants category, you can raise your hand there. So click on participants, and then at the bottom, there's a little button that says raise your hand. And if you do, then I'll be happy to let you ask a question. This is a really important time for us because we're able to take the material and zero in on specific needs. And also what we can do is we can give you some tailored strategy. Maybe we didn't talk about your specific situation. I'll go wherever you want right here. Take me wherever you want. Well, I'll use this as an opportunity to do some teaching. So let's start with Shelley. Shelley, why don't you go ahead and welcome, first of all. I'm glad that you're here with us.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell me? Go ahead.
Tell you about myself. I'm a mother of a 14-year-old girl.
Okay.
And we are a blended family. My husband has never had any children.
Okay.
And it's always been just my daughter and me. And so now we are all three living together. And it's been very challenging. The two of them, my husband and my daughter, butt heads constantly.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some major heart work that needs to be done on both of their parts.
Sure.
I always feel like I'm in the middle.
Yeah, a challenge.
Yeah.
This is great. I am so glad you're asking this question. Can I just respond to the first part of what you've said so far? So what you're telling me, you're in a blended family. This is great. I'm glad you're asking the question because we have a lot of blended families, I'm sure, represented in this particular presentation. So, and we have a challenge between your 14-year-old daughter and your husband, and you find yourself often being in the middle there. And so I want to address that. Now, one of the challenges is that your daughter at 14 years old is in the first stage of adolescence, and there are 3 stages to adolescence. 12 to 16 is the first stage, and it is characterized by emotionally driven decision making. So often these children in this first stage are, they do what they feel like doing. They don't do what they don't feel like doing. If they're unhappy with something, they let you know. Their emotions are pretty outside there. So it's often challenging to be able to relate to them, whether you're in a blended family or not. So it can be a challenging place. So that's one challenge you have. But the other one has to do with this blended family. Now he's coming into this dynamic, and now you're forming what we call, as we're working with blended families, a team. This is a new definition of family for your daughter. She's learning this, whether she was party to this or not. She's part of it, and it's an important part. And so this team approach is going to be very important. Now, in order to do this, he can't just jump in, obviously, and start disciplining her. But I think one of the mistakes we have in blended families is that the new parent comes in and doesn't do any discipline with the child at all, and that damages then the unit. So you have a unit now, a family that has a dad and a mom and a child. And there's this work that needs to be done to create the relationships and to strengthen that unit. So I would encourage, one of the things we want to write through these tools that we have here. One that I've already given you. One is the relationship tool. He needs to look for ways to emotionally connect with this young lady. We've got to find ways for him to do that. That's going to be very important for him to connect. And that may be hard for him. He's coming into a situation, maybe he doesn't know. He's not had children of his own. He needs to practice that. You can set up those, maybe working in this situation, but that's one of the things that needs to happen. The second thing that needs to happen is this idea that we're working as a team and the leadership is shared. Okay, so there's sometimes where I would suggest we're going to clean up after a meal. Everybody needs to be in the kitchen maybe in order for the meal to be cleaned up. And sometimes she can lead. And sometimes he's going to lead. Sometimes you're going to lead, because we're learning how to function as a unit. Now, this new kind of, we're calling it a family. You can call it a family, which it is, or you can call it a team, that we're working as a team in order to start fostering this greater working relationship between her and your husband, or I'm going to call him the stepdad here, in order to make that happen. And then the firmness is going to be important too. So this firmness is going to allow for some structures. We're going to practice some things in order to make this work. Now, your role here is very important, because we're creating a triangle. That's what we call this in relationships. Okay. You're triangling into a conflicting relationship. The way you do that is important because your goal is to not solve their problems, but to bring them together to resolve them themselves. So you might say to him, oh, yeah, I understand. She's having a hard time. She's treating you unkindly. That's right. Here's what I think would be good for you to do. You're going to her and saying, hey, look, we need to get through this. You need to be able to work with him in the right way. So before you can go forward, you need to be able to solve this problem. I'm not going to solve it for you. You need to go in and do this if you want, and then we can use a reward or privilege if we want, but we're using it to build a quality, okay, inside of her heart that is a sense of cooperation. What we're trying to do is foster this greater sense of relationship and the ability to lead as a team. Does that make sense, Shelley?
Yep, definitely does.
Okay.
And I think that's part of the problem, is that I have been like in the middle instead of letting them deal with each other. You know, like you said, you know, foster that relationship. I'm the one that's in the middle and kind of always has to take over the situation.
Yes, that's a triangling relationship. Now you triangle in a positive way by helping to not solve the problem, but force them to work together and counsel them, you know, and coach them along to be able to be successful. Okay, let's
Great.
take
Thank
somebody
you.
else. You're welcome, Shelley. Thanks for joining us. Shall we take Julie? Julie's on her iPhone, and let's try to make her live. Okay, we've got your audio. Let's see if we can get Julie's video going. Hi, Julie.
Hi, thank you for having me. I wanted to ask, we're working on the kids, we're working on behaviors. Do you also have materials to work on the parents? I'm damaged goods. I try, I'm a bereaved parent. My firstborn son passed. I'm nowhere near over it. I don't think I will be. But it definitely cramps your parenting style to have that much hurt and anger still underneath. So if you could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Julie, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. It's so painful place for any parent to be in. And so what that means is that you have some heart damage that needs to be resolved inside of your heart. And that heart damage, I'm convinced, is going to take place in part through your family and working. You have other children that you're working with, and God can do some healing in your heart as a result of that. But it's probably going to take some other work that God's going to do in your heart to bring about that healing that needs to take place. The healing that takes place in your heart is partly going to take place in the home. God has created the family to be this laboratory for growth. And if you continue to work using the heart-based approach with your child, you're going to end up saying things like, wow, I needed this for myself. As we systematically go through the heart of a child, we go through different areas. We go through the getting things done department. That's what we're talking about today. Lots of material there. We go to the off track, on track. That's what we're going to talk about next time with emotions, the person's off track versus on track. And we learn how to stay on track. But everybody gets off track, and you'll know when you're off track because your thoughts and your emotions will drag you in the wrong direction. In our next session together, I'm going to talk to you when you know you're off track. You need to have a plan for getting back on track. And as you practice that in family life or just in life in general, God's going to produce that healing in you as you continue to allow him to do that. You're going to want to pray and talk to the Lord. And a lot of this, allowing God to work in our emotions, is going to be what helps you to recover. But I want you to know that you will never lose the pain of the loss. What we want to do is help you to overcome anything like bitterness or anxiety that you might have about other losses you might, with your kids or anything else. Anxiety, we want to help you with disappointment. We want to help you with the different emotional challenges, but the pain that you've experienced, you will continue to experience, and you'll experience this. And the solution for that is the comfort that God wants to provide for you. So in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, it says that God comforts us. I love this because he's the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort. And I love that because the picture of a father being compassionate, I need more of that as a dad, because often as dads, we're more firm with our kids, but it's the Father who's compassionate. And it says there that God comforts us with his comfort so that we can comfort those who are also struggling with the comfort we have received. God wants to give you some comfort, a special gift of comfort to deal with the tragedy that you've experienced so that you can turn that into ministry. That's God's design for you. And I would suggest that as you use a heart-based approach with your children, God will do some very important work inside of your heart to bring the healing that you need in order to minister to other people, including your own family. Okay?
Okay.
God bless you as you continue the difficult challenge that you're experiencing. God has good things planned for you, and it'll happen as you continue to work that out.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Julie. Let's go to Josh. Let's make Josh live. Stand by, Josh, as we do this and get you your mic. Did we lose Josh?
I'm actually not Josh.
I thought that
I'm Josh's mom.
Oh, well, great. I hate to ask how old Josh is.
So Josh is actually 17 years old.
All right.
I'm a single mom, and I am working with Josh on something specific in regards to something that I call contributing to the family.
Great.
And so what I've asked him to do is each day, I want him to contribute to the family in some way, whatever chores or actions, or I'm hoping for him to find things around the house to work on, to pick up or put away or clean or help with the pets or something like that. Good. And I tie that to his age by asking him, since he's 17 years old, I ask him to contribute, 15 to 17 minutes worth of time every day. Good. And so he seems to be on board with this concept.
Good.
Although I'm having a challenge with, the circling back and reporting back in kind of piece. Right. And so a lot of times it kind of gets brushed under the carpet. And when I ask him what he's done to contribute to the family that day, he'll mention maybe a couple of things, or I get a grunt or a groan or something like that.
Gotcha. I've got some ideas for you. Let me help you with that. I think, first of all, I commend you for your work. We're in the Getting Things Done department right now, and the tasks I gave you, everybody, as an assignment, are to practice the instruction routine, which develops the very first few things we're doing in that area is just this compliance, trying to move a boulder sometimes where a child's very resistant, and we're just trying to get them to compliance. Compliance is number one. Then we move to cooperation. Cooperation is where they're doing what we say, and they're doing it with a good attitude, and they are taking initiative to report back on their own and so on. So that word initiative is the key thing we're looking for in the cooperation side. So level 1 is compliance, level 2 is cooperation, and level 3 is contribution, exactly where you are. So you're moving to level 3, which is very important, and contribution is seeing what needs to be done and doing it without being asked. We wrote a book about this, and it's called Say Goodbye to Whining, Complaining, and Bad Attitudes in You and Your Kids. It's a biblical study of the concept of honor. Honor is, we define honor as treating people as special, doing more than what's expected, and having a good attitude. So we're zeroing in on the doing more than what's expected here. And so here's what I would suggest you do. Probably he needs a little bit more structure in this, but we don't want to turn it into obedience, because you want him to see what needs to be done and do it without being asked. I'm going to give you some ideas about how you can do this with a 17-year-old. I would suggest you call it the word honor, and you talk about it, because this is a life skill that needs. This is something God instructs. We not only obeying, but we're honoring. This is going to complete the job description for this child. He has an obligation to contribute to the emotional climate in the room. Okay, all children do, not just a teenager, but all children have a obligation to contribute to the emotional climate in the room. That means whining, complaining, and those things are out the window, because you can't believe that if I'm unhappy, I have the right to make everybody else unhappy. You're contributing to the emotional climate in the room, and as you're saying, you're looking for things that need to be done and doing them. So you might say to him something like this: son, would you please go into the bathroom and do an honor check? You're not telling him what to do. You're telling him to go in there and see what needs to be done and do it on his own and report back to you what he did. Or you can say to him, go in the living room and do an honor check. Now, let's say you send him into the living room and he does an honor check. Not your son, but maybe a child who isn't as advanced as your son might go in, pick up a pillow and put it on the couch and say, well, I did my honor thing. Now, you could go in there and you say to him, son, what you did was great. I wish more people would pick things up off the floor and put them on the couch where they belong. That's great. But let me tell you what you could have done. You could have taken these papers and put them in the recycling. You could have taken the cups and plates that are in the living room, put them in the kitchen. You could have even vacuumed the floor. That would have been honoring. I want you to think about that, because the next time I ask you to do some honor in the living room, it'll give you some more ideas. So we want to give him the assignment, and your idea of having him report back is important because that produces the accountability. He needs to be able to respond back. He needs to be able to come back to you and tell you what he did. And because that's part of his growth experience, to be held accountable. So there's sometimes when he says, hey, I picked up the pillow and put it on the couch, you're going to say, that was nice, but I think maybe you probably ought to do a little bit more in the honoring department before you're free to go. So I think if you use the concept of honor, you help him understand, because here's what you're teaching him. You're teaching him customer service. This is customer service brought home. And if a child learns the customer service at home, powerful things can happen in their lives as they go out into the rest of the world and they treat other people with kindness. These are the kids. You're teaching your son who's going to be the one that on the promotion track. He's the one who's going to be noticed because he's the one who doesn't just think about himself. He's the one who does more than others. When you go to church and you're leaving, you might be the ones who go around and help straighten up some of the chairs because your family is an honoring family. We do more than what's expected.
Yeah.
And so you're looking for ways to do that. I think you're right on track. Maybe that'll give you some more ideas, but I appreciate what you're sharing because that'll be so valuable for Josh as he continues on. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. We've got a few more minutes. Let's go another 10 minutes. I love doing this question answer time. Let's go to Joel Eakins. Joel, we're going to make you live there. I think you're live. Go ahead. Tell us what's going on in your whole family, Joel, and how can we assist you?
Well, lots of questions, but maybe one of them I'll save for the electronics topic in a few sessions. But I guess related to the heart issue, the heart approach, my biggest question right now is, as my kids get older, they tend to have less desire to spend time together in the Word, and you know, we've even tried sometimes dumbing it down to like just one proverb over lunch, or sorry, over dinner, or you know, all the way to doing a little Bible study, that kind of thing. So, but they're fairly resistant, or they're becoming more resistant, it feels like, to it, and less interested, or maybe they've never been interested and it's just showing more in their emotional teen years.
Yeah. What you're doing is valuable, that you're having a regular devotion time in your home. What you're making a statement that our home has convictions that are based on God's word. I would suggest that with young people, often we have to use activity in order to make it relevant for them, so they feel like this is something that they can use. When I grew up in a Christian home, and I remember my dad had. I fell in love with the Bible when I was a young child because my parents used activity as the primary way they taught us the scriptures. And so I remember when I was 14 years old and my brother was 12, my dad had us sitting around the table and we were creating a commentary in the book of Proverbs. We were organizing the book of Proverbs for God. In that we had, I still can close my eyes and I can see, we had the listening page, and we had the money page, and we had the speech page, and we had the immoral woman page. I mean, my father there's a lot said in the book of Proverbs about that, and my father used that to teach us about sexual purity. And so we engaged in some really valuable conversations that way. I would suggest that when Jesus taught his disciples, he didn't usually sit around the table and read the Bible to them. Mainly he was out, he was out doing different things. And so if there's a way for you to tie that into to creativity, that would be really helpful for your work. This is such an important burden that we have, is having family time, we call it. We have a whole resource, we have a whole set of books that that provide creative ways to teach the Bible to young people. And so you might consider taking a look at those called Family Time Activities books. You'll actually see them on that Pairing Power Pack page, because in the resource, the plus section, we've put a couple books in there for you, because we want to encourage your time to spend with the Lord with them. You have to realize that young people today have a misconception. They have a belief. And so this is so important. They have a belief that their mission in life is to have fun. That is their belief, often fostered by us as parents, because we send them out to go out on Friday night. We say, okay, go have fun. When they come back and we say, to evaluate their evening, did you have fun? And so we're using that as kind of the measurement, and it's a dangerous thing we do with our children. I'm not suggesting that you do this, Joel, but I just think that our children don't understand adolescence. And adolescence goes from 10 to 25, and those children are on a mission, and that mission is to learn the skills they need in adolescence to be adults. They must learn them. God calls it a path. The Hebrew word is derek. It's the path of life. They need to learn how to live on that path, and they don't understand the path. Jesus described it for us. Jesus said it this way. He says, there's a broad path. You'll know it's broad because many are on it. And it leads somewhere. It leads to destruction. It looks very attractive. The problem with the broad path is that all these landmines in it, and I say to young people regularly, when you're between the ages of 10 to 25, most of the people you know, most of your friends during that age, sometime between 10 and 25, will hit a landmine that will damage them well into the future. There's plenty of landmines that can be hit for these children. But Jesus says, but there's another path. It's a narrow path. It's narrow because very few are on it. And that's the path that leads to life. If we can help our children get through the ages of 10 to 25 without hitting one of those landmines of getting involved in drugs, illicit sex, getting involved with the law, and developing patterns of dishonesty, they get involved in with the wrong crowd and all kinds. If we can avoid those landmines with those children, amazing things can happen. And it starts exactly where you are with God's word. I would say Psalm 119 is the passage written for young people. It talks about the derek, or the path, or the way, and you'll see it there. And going through it, it's the longest chapter in the Bible, and it has lots of advice for young people, so you can add that. It's in little paragraphs, stanzas in that whole psalm. And if you take that and you ask the question of your young people, ask this question. I'm going to read this stanza by stanza, and one stanza every time we get together. And I just want to ask you this question. What's one thing in that passage that stands out for you? How is that relevant for your life? Let's talk about it. I believe that every child, when they get up in the morning, should ask this question of the Lord. See, here's the problem. Sometimes children feel like they've grown out of their faith. They made a commitment to Christ when they were 6 or 7. Now they're 15, and they didn't bring their faith into the every year, and so now they feel like they've grown out of it. They've grown out of their faith at 15 years old. So we have a task to help them see their faith in every stage of their development. It's not just kids. We as adults must do the same thing, or we'll feel that our faith is old. It's stale. We must bring it in. Here's how you do it. We teach children how to pray, and it's not just, Lord, pray that we'll have a nice day, we can have the soccer game. Lord, please give me that gift that I wanted, or help me save the money I need for whatever. No, the prayer goes like this. Every morning you want to pray and say, God, how can I fit into your plans today? And then you watch during the day, because now we're engaging young people in the experiential side of the Christian life. God is working in your life. The Holy Spirit is leading you. He's guiding you into all truth. He'll help you remember things. He'll lead you into situations, help you see a person who's in need. You can do something about it. You are following the Lord in the daily interactions. And then at the end of the day, we ask this question of young people. How did you see God work today? And if we ask that question on Sundays, it's an easy answer, because we all know that God works on Sundays. But does God work on Mondays? Definitely he works. And so we talk about how God did any of those things. He helped me get through a test, or he helped me remember something I had forgotten, or he led me to meet somebody that I didn't know before. Or how does God working in your life? Beautiful sunset that's out there that we see in the evening. God is at work. How did you see God work today? It's very important in our spiritual training of children. We give them Bible knowledge, memorizing verses and so on. We also teach them to experience what I'm talking about now, experiential learning of the Christian faith. And lastly, it's the in-life kinds of things like we're talking about, the instruction routine. That's because God is at work in our lives. And so I want to end tonight with a Bible story. I want to tell you a Bible story that I think will empower you and will help you all as you're going through and teaching this to your children. The Bible story comes from Numbers chapter 9, verses 15 to 23. It's the story of the cloud, but I got to tell you how we get to the story first, because here's what happens. God rescues the Israelites out of Egypt under Moses' leadership and takes them to the Mount Sinai, where they get the principles of doing what's right. And God gives them all those principles there and how to build the tabernacle and how to dress the priests and all those things. He gives them all the things they need. And then they're on their way to the promised land. And we get to the promised land, what happens? Could they go in? No. They didn't obey. Now, we could be counselors and we could identify all the reasons why they couldn't go into the promised land. I suppose they had post-traumatic stress disorder, and because they lived under harsh taskmasters back there, very difficult things to experience. They maybe had emotional issues because they didn't have any homes to live in. They've been wandering around the wilderness, no stability in their lives in that factor. Oh, we could look for all kinds of excuses. But God says, okay, we got a problem here. We're going to go back into the wilderness and I'm going to train you. And this is where Numbers chapter 9, 15 to 23 fit in the story. Read it. It's powerful. Share this with your kids. It says this: the cloud's going to come over the tabernacle, and when it comes down, you're to camp. And when it goes up, you're to go. And you never know when that's going to happen. He says sometimes it's going to happen in the morning that it's going to rise and you're to go. Sometimes it's going to happen in the evening that it's going to rise and you're to go. Sometimes it's going to happen after one day and you're to go. Sometimes after 3 days and you're to go. Sometimes after a week or a month or a year and you're to go. In other words, you never know. You need to keep your eye on there. And then he says this is the command of the Lord that you go. In other words, I'm going to teach you how to follow instructions. And you can't have the wait a minute disease. You can't say, oh, we're not finished cooking our food here. You can't say our clothes are still drying on the line. No, you stop what you're doing. You follow the cloud, because you need to learn how to follow instructions. Because one of the benefits of learning how to follow instructions, learning obedience, learning these things, is that you learn how to trust. You learn how to give up your agenda. You don't have to understand why every time I give you an instruction. You just need to do it. You need to follow the cloud. So now they come all the way over to the promised land under Joshua's leadership. Were they able to go in? Yes, not only go in, but they were able to do something we'd consider silly. They marched around a city and played musical instruments. Wow. How were they able to do that? Because God used 3 tools all at the same time. First, he used relationship. He says to them, I'm going to take care of you out there in the wilderness. I'm going to give you shoes that don't wear out. I'm going to lead you to water. I'm going to give you food every day, except for Saturday when you don't go gather food. And I'm giving this to you a test to see if you can follow instructions. That's what he says in the passage. And then he says, I'm going to protect you from your enemies and I'm going to lead you to the promised land. So he does this with relationship. Secondly, he uses visioning, and he says, this land that you're going to is a land that's filled with milk and honey. Boy, you're going to love this land. It's all about visioning. It's going to be great. And thirdly, he used firmness. He says, you're going to follow instructions. I'm going to teach you how to do this, and we're going to practice it. There's no question here. You're going to learn how to practice the instruction routine over and over and over again so that you can build the trust you need inside of your heart, and God can do something powerful for you in your life. I encourage you this week as you work with your children to think in terms of that. Tell them that story. Practice working on the instruction routine. At the same time, you're building relationship, casting vision, and let's see what starts to change in your child. Go back to that list in this video of all of those qualities that need to be developed in the getting things done department. But don't think about the tasks. Think about what's going on inside of the heart. Let's watch some things happen as you work with your child. I'd love to hear your reports in a couple of weeks. We can get back together, because when we get back together, we're going to look at a different cycle. Now we're looking at the cycle of getting things done, but we have to look at the cycle of I'm off track. I need correction. Please help me. We need to have a plan for that, because here's the mistake that parents make. They stay on the getting things done department when they should be on the I'm off track, I need to get back on track department. So here's what happens. A child starts yelling at a parent, and the parent starts yelling back. So what the parent basically does is validates the child's poor response. Okay, you can yell at me. You can be disrespectful. I'm going to keep trying to get things done. You need to. And what happens then is the child learns these qualities, and bad things happen in the child's heart. We need to move to a different cycle. That's the cycle I'm going to talk about in the next session. When we talk about emotions, I'm going to help you understand what it means when a child's off track, how to get them back on track. We're going to deal with emotions, but we're also going to deal with a lot more stuff. Another cycle a child needs in their heart. Join with me in a couple weeks. Go ahead and sign up for that. Look at the other assignments that we've given you, and trust God will do some great things in your heart. God bless you and have a great evening.